Just how explosive is Florida State's offense?
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back into another edition of the Locked On Seminoles podcast. I am your host, Brian Smith. Thanks to the everydayers out there that make this a great show. I truly appreciate it. This show can be found wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Network, your team every day. We're going to talk about explosive plays today, how Florida State has went from last year to this year and kept up, and why I also think that it's going to get even better in the future. Even after Jordan Travis, Keon Coleman, and several players leave Florida State. Segment 3, all kind of condensed today. I'm going to do about 15 or so minutes, but segment 3 is going to be interesting because it talks about recruiting and what they have coming in to work in this system. It's going to be a lot of fun. Today's show is brought to you by Gametime. Gametime app, it's very easy to download if you're looking for last-minute tickets. This is a great opportunity. Forget planning months in advance. Gametime has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event. Exclusive flash deals on tickets for football, basketball, concerts, anything that you can think of. Gametime has something for you. The Gametime guarantee means that you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section or row for less, Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. Snag the tickets without the stress with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. It is a pretty cool app. Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about explosive plays, how they're charted, what they mean. What is an explosive play? Well, the NCAA has different parameters for it. Different websites have it. I kind of use some of the old school metrics that coaches have talked to me about, and you'll hear constantly on shows. It could be Collins, we're talking about an NFL game, whatever it might be. 10, 15, and 20. Those are the numbers you hear the most. Today, I'm going to use 10 and 20 just as a barometer. I got this off CFB Stats. If you're looking for a website that gives college stats, it's pretty darn easy to use. CFBstats.com. I recommend it. They do a really nice job. It's something I use pretty much on a daily basis for anything I'm doing, college football, statistics in general. So last year, I'm just going to start with that. Then we'll go to the LSU game, and then we'll move down the line. Florida State was number 12 in the nation for 10-plus yard plays. Pretty darn good. They had 233 of them. With 13 games, they averaged 17.92 a game on average. It's really impressive. Even more so, the Noles with 20-plus yard plays were number 3 in the country. You want to get over the hump, make big explosive plays, change what the defense does because they know you can get over the top, or in some cases just run around them. 20-plus yard plays. How many do you think the Noles had? In 13 games, it was 97. They were very, very close to being number 1 in the country. 97. They averaged 7.46 plays of 20 or more yards last year. That is tremendous. Last year, this is the top 12 for the 10-plus yard plays. Just as an example, Georgia, Southern Cal, Texas, San Antonio, Washington, North Carolina, Western Kentucky, Utah, TCU, Houston, LSU, Alabama, Florida State. What do those teams have in common? Except for the obvious teams there that play in lesser conferences that have some speed and some transfers that kind of hit the home run. It's elite powers like Georgia, Southern Cal, Florida State, Alabama, LSU. You're not really surprised. But there's different ways to get there too. Utah, you don't think, oh, Utah's got a ton of speed. They're so well coached. You can get there with that. And it's pretty much what Norvell and his staff have done, but with even more talent. Utah does not have a Keon Coleman. They do not have a Destin Hill, et cetera, that's that skilled, in my opinion, among others. But they still get it done. You got to give Utah staff credit. They are tremendous at finding talent and developing it. Looking at the numbers overall, Florida State is headed in the right direction long term too. And this is why I say it. It's balance. So I'm going to use the Utah theme here. They had I forget the kid's name, but they had a tremendous tight end last year. He was the first or second tight end off the board in the NFL draft this past April. They utilized him. You don't have to throw a bomb to score. You hit a tight end down the seam, he can get you 20 yards. That's the way you do it. Use your talent, use your personnel. Now, again, Florida State has a bigger round robin event when they bring out their receivers to compete in spring ball, fall camp, etc. I mean, there's so many good players. You don't know who's going to always develop into the top guy. They've got more talent. Now they're starting to obviously get there. Keon kind of put them over the top. But I mean, you look at the roster and all these speedy guys, if they continue to buy in to Norvell's scheme, to what all the FSU coaches, Dugans and all of them are teaching, they could surpass the 233, and they could also get into the triple digits, which is a ridiculous number for 20-yard plays this year. Against LSU, now this is a much better opponent. Against LSU, they had 18 plays of 10 or more yards and 6 of 20. That's a pretty good start. That would put them pretty close to where they were, right on the math with last year. But against an elite opponent, if they can have a good game right here against Southern Miss, which I'm pretty sure that they will, and I would imagine most folks watching this podcast or listening to it would agree, Florida State has a chance to get into the top 2 or 3 in the country pretty quick. I don't even look at the number 1 spot after 1 week. I don't care. We need to get at least 2, if not 3 weeks in to start looking at big picture numbers. But it's a good start. And before they go to Clemson, they have a great chance to be in the top 5. I'll take a look at it after week 3. If you want to, again, CFB stats, you can find it there on the national page. But all these teams that do it, you look at them, they're a little different. Georgia obviously has an incredible tight end as well. Brock Bowers is so unique. It's not even, they run reverses with him down on the goal line. Find your talent, do different things. FSU has Destin Hill now. They've got Rodney Hill. They've got all these guys coming off the bench and competing. Winston Watkins hasn't really done anything yet, but he's got a ton of talent, a lot of experience. They will find another way. The other thing that Florida State can do is just pound the football with it. One of the reasons they ended up with 233 last year was inside zone, outside zone, guard tackle trap. I mean, just basic football plays that they just executed. And they showed that in the second half. They made a slight adjustment to their running game in the second half, using more 2 backs and pulling, but it was just execution. Not necessarily the sexiest thing to talk about, but if it's 2nd down and 3 and Jordan Travis is standing behind the center, that's a good place to be. Florida State's explosiveness is going to continue to rise. Just be careful how you label it. I'm excited, just like anybody else, when I see a great group of receivers go out. In Florida State, there's plenty. But that running game also sets up the passing game, and that's why they can kill the other opponents coming up, no matter if they choose to really focus on slowing down the running game, or maybe they double. Well, they might rotate it, but probably Keon, I would imagine. But they could go a couple of different ways there. And then you got the tight ends. Florida State's tight ends, do not sleep on them. They can make plays too. I think that there's going to be a couple of games where they could be the difference in winning against Clemson and some of the other really good opponents. You're going to need to be a little more balanced and still get explosives that way. One more thing before I kind of slip on into the second segment here, real quick. If you look at these numbers, and then I didn't do it because I don't even want to know, but look at like 218 to 221, the years they didn't do good, they're going to be totally different. Wins and losses are oftentimes dictated by those, oh, wow, look at that. That kind of wow play changes a game's momentum and its scoreboard. And eventually, the win-loss record. Segment 2, I just want to talk about the receivers a little bit and what they've got going on. Now that Florida State has depth, one of the reasons they can get into and consistently beat teams with this speedy offense, reverses, slants, slip screens, whatever, it's just depth. When they get up on Southern Miss this weekend, and they will, like 20 points or whatever, when they bring in somebody off the bench, like Hakeem Williams might play quite a bit. He's just learning. He's a freshman, but I've seen him play live. Not only can he go over the top or take it off your head, he can make a guy miss at over 200 pounds. He's a dude. They're going to be able to score on basic plays with reserves. When I was watching Florida State and Florida and Miami and Notre Dame and Michigan, like Desmond Howard or whoever it was, 80s and 90s, the teams that got to the national title game almost always had a guy that you knew before the game that you had to somehow at least slow him down because he was a Heisman candidate, All-American candidate out wide that was just incredibly shifty. Peter Warrick, different guys like that. If you couldn't at least slow them down, and don't you dare punt it to them. If you couldn't at least slow them down, you had no chance to win. All those teams had guys like that. Florida State was as good as any. Obviously, they put Dion back there sometimes on punt returns, had all kinds of guys. Corey Sawyer, different guys came across the ball and played different spots in special teams. That's how you win. Looking at Florida State right now, though, and I was just I'm going to get into a little more of it in segment 3. They've got a good balance on the roster of different heights, weights, sizes, skills, guys that can move to different spots. It makes it very easy to be a play caller, right? The only way it's negative is like, well, they're all good options right here. Which one do I go with? I'll take that problem over I don't know which guy we're going to on 3rd and 6. Florida State has plenty of options. Plenty. So they should be able to hit the home run more often than not with just good plays, good execution, not having to get fancy, not having to run double reverse pass, being crazy. I mean, there's nothing wrong with a few of those in a season, but if you have to use those against Alabama or Clemson or Ohio State or whatever it is in a big game, regardless of circumstance, your chances of success ultimately to win that game are reduced because they've got D linemen that can get in there and crush you. You need to be able to execute basic plays where quarterback gets it, hike and throw so that you eliminate that box. That's the biggest thing with explosive plays in the passing game, and Florida State's receivers allow them to do it. You're not going to out-recruit Georgia and Alabama most of the time in the box. They just do a tremendous job of it. But if they're not a part of the play very often because it's a hike and throw, that's what Florida State was famous for in the 80s and 90s. They beat you so bad on the perimeter that they eliminated other people's talent in the trenches, and it changed the other team's play calling too because they knew they had to score a lot to keep up with the Noles, that they won. That's how they did it. I watched it for years. They're starting to get back to that because the guys coming off the bench, just like when Florida State started to really, really have guys in depth across the board, guy like somebody like Snoop Menace that came in, a Miami kid that came in, and he worked his way up, but he didn't start from day one, but you had to play him like in the second quarter when he came in. You're facing that guy who would have started as a freshman at a lot of schools. That's what Florida State is getting back to. That's very hard because the other teams don't have the depth. Most of them, there's a handful to compete with that. And on defense, you're chasing. More energy is expended when you're chasing the rabbit than when you are the rabbit. So finally, segment 3 here, something I'm going to talk about that I alluded to before we really got into this. We're going to talk about why it's going to be even better after Jordan Travis and them are gone. You're probably thinking, Brian, you're nuts. Well, here's why. I have complete faith in Luke Cromahawk long-term. That's the one kid I've seen a ton of, and I know. A couple of the other younger kids on Florida State's roster, quarterback, I don't know. I don't have an opinion. Luke, I do. He has a howitzer. He's a smart kid. He's mobile. He will run when needed, and he can make plays off platform. He is the modern-day spread quarterback. And when you combine him with the kids that I'm going to talk about here, the explosive plays for the Noles are going to continue. Here's what I got. In 23, they got Hakeem Williams, who I mentioned in segment 2. Goldie Lawrence, who is a kid I know very, very well, played at Seminole High School just north of Orlando. As physical as it gets, he could play safety, running back, whatever. He is a very physical football player, and he is a clutch player. And then they got Jacobs, a kid that's a slot. And those three work well together. I would play Goldie in a traditional 3-wide set out wide, Jacobs in the slot, Williams to the boundary. It's a perfect match. Remember me talking about in the recruiting show that I did? Make sure you don't have holes, recruit balance so another team can't pick on one area, and then when you have the ball, they just take away your start. This is why Florida State is doing good. So the 23 class at receiver is excellent. 24, in terms of explosives, is also a balanced group. Landon Thomas is like a receiver. He's as good a tight end as there is in the country, recruited by everybody. Well, Wayne McCoy out of Miami Central has the ability to play several spots, get over the top, punt returner, the whole nine. You got B.J. Gibson, one of the most underrated players in the country, coming out of the state of Georgia. You got Elijah Moore, the big-bodied kid out of D.C., and then you got Camden Fryer. Yes, his dad is the one who was on the 93 title team that plays at Lake City, Columbia. I've seen him play, vastly underrated. This 2-year haul for the Noles is as good as it gets at wide receiver in the country. Speed, size, hands, balance group in terms of which specific positions they can play. Why not? You add that to Chromahawk, you bet your bottom dollar Florida State's explosive plays are going to be very good moving forward. Last point. Florida State is in a situation now where their passing game is going to start making teams back off. You don't want to get beat over the top. The running game. You might see a little bit more Jordan Travis, and this could happen with the next quarterback, whoever it ends up being for Florida State in 24, 25, 26. Quarterback draw, just up the middle. Don't take the hits, slide, 2nd and 3. Very generic, but those kinds of plays, that's what Charlie Ward did and numerous other quarterbacks. If you give them an opportunity to get in 2nd and 3, they're going to take it. You never go out of style 2nd and 3. I've never met an offensive coordinator. I've asked a bunch. Are you okay with 2nd and 6? They've all said yes. 2nd and 3, then obviously it's yes. Florida State is going to make teams make really hard decisions on defense with this kind of recruiting. Very difficult. So it's going to be fun to watch the transformation after this year. Obviously, we're going to enjoy the 23 season. But long term, Florida State has a really good group as well. So thank you for watching this Rapid Fire Saturday edition. Make sure that you like, you subscribe. Please share this podcast and bookmark it. And above all else, just for me, please comment. If you have something to say, like go on the YouTube page. If you're just listening to this podcast, that's fine. Go ahead and give me some information about something you might like to hear about. Perhaps it's something in regards to why you think that I said something that is correct, why it's incorrect. I'm more than happy to discuss. Whatever the case may be, please enjoy your weekend. Enjoy all the football. I will too. Everybody be safe and take care.